Greetings, everyone. This is Umby again, and it's time for week one of the VGC Draft League. Our first opponent is going to be Meserock. I hope I am pronouncing that correctly there. And we did go ahead and play the matches. So normally I do like kind of a live viewing of my perspective for the match. I tend to rant a lot, so just to keep the video shorter, I'm just going to go over the replays instead and take you through my thoughts at the time. But before we get to that, of course, do a quick breakdown of the matchup and how I want to approach it here. And immediately, the most concerning things on mind are the Flutter Mane and the Iron Bundle. A really nasty round one of draft pick for my opponent here. And the big thing is both of them side by side make this really weird speed challenge where they're at the top of the charts. And while I do have the Hisuian Electrode to outspeed them, either Pokemon have the ability to run the booster energy to further boost their speed. Only way I'm getting past that is with like a choice scarf on the Electrode, which feels a little bit bad. You kind of want to lean on like a Life Orb or um, choice specs to boost its already low damage output, especially next to the Rillaboom, setting the grassy terrain. Because with Chloroblast, Electrode Hisui with its choice specs actually does a pretty fair amount of damage. So those are like the kind of the main things that were like on my mind to move around and counter. Outside of that, I was kind of keeping an eye on the Rotom for one thing, as it's got a pretty good matchup spread into me overall. Like the Rillaboom, Sandy Shocks, the Gyarados, the Electrode, Iron Thorns does pretty well into all of them, even though the Vaporeon on the back end, right? Only real threatening thing to it is the Heatran, its natural fire typing. But if it's carrying perhaps Terra Fire, it gets to reduce the damage it's taking from that end as well and continue on. At that point, I'm kind of forced to expose Gyarados, Iron Thorns, or Vaporeon to try and hit it super effectively and eventually get it down because I don't have a lot in the way of a strong neutral damage that feels comfortable to hit it with. Last but not least, I was considering Mudsdale as something to have to also keep an eye on. I do still value Iron Thorns as a very strong utility for this team as far as like its presence. Like you kind of have to deal with it, the Rock Slice and the Wild Charge coming from it most of the time. But if you put it next to also another relevant threat like the Heatran or Sandy Shocks, you kind of have to like choose your target, right? So if I'm kind of leaning on that plan, Mudsdale is a little bit of a hitch in said plan that I have to watch out for. It also is a good way to target into Heatran into to Sandy Shocks, so it doesn't have to like worry about those scenarios too much. I do imagine there would be some hesitation because Rillaboom and Gyarados are on the team. Plus, it's naturally slow, so unless you have a plan to reliably get Trick Room up for it, it becomes hard to really utilize it the way that you want to. So, with all that in mind, the way that I plan around it, like I mentioned, Choice Scarf is the only way that we're going to make sure that we outspeed either of those booster energy Pokemon, and Choice Scarf is what we're using. Going with Chloroblast, Scary Face, Thunderbolt, and Volt Switch. So double stab with a pivot option, and Scary Face. Since I am since I am outrunning, the Iron Bundle and the Flutter Mane here, we can use the Scary Face on whichever target does not have the booster energy, and that allows some of the other Pokemon to get ahead and attack from there. So that includes Heatran, Iron Thorns, Rillaboom, and I believe I even spec the Gyarados to be able to outrun after that Scary Face is applied. Of course, for whatever Pokemon is booster energy, we'll have to deal with. But if it's Iron Bundle, automatically the Electrode handles that unless it uses a Terra to get out of that situation. Right. From there, we do have the Gyarados, and that's just a way to check the Mudsdale if it's there. To be very careful because I don't really have any other ground immunities, just the ground resistance from Rillaboom, which if it's already in play, don't really have any too much in the back end to deal with that. Heatran and Rillaboom in combination with each other, talked about that on the initial stream, just a general breakdown of my team. Just the general matchup spread looks really good for them because they cover each other's weaknesses so well. But Heatran in particular into the the speedy duo, I'll call them, is also pretty solid. Does really well into the Flutter Mane. mainly just have to worry about that iron bundle here. So that's why I was wearing the Pasho Berry to reduce the damage from the Hydro Pump, but also sporting the Terra Grass. So, initially take the hit with the Pasho Berry, and you still have the option for Terra Grass to take the next Hydro Pump, keep it alive. Just some options to work around before it is ever incentivized to use Freeze Dry on this once it goes Terra Grass, right? Rillaboom carrying the Assault Vest. Again, we're still targeting down those two Pokemon, so it's very specially defensive invested to deal with both of them as they are special attackers, the Flutter and the Bundle. Of course, the Iron Thorns has to come. At least I gotta show it on Team Preview and put the Fear of God into them, basically. But also, I mean, sitting next to any of these Pokemon, I think it provides a valid threat that the opponent has to worry about. Again, let's say I put it next to the Heatran. You have to worry about both Pokemon. Which Pokemon do you take out if you can't hit them effectively at the same time, right? It's also carrying the Ice Punch in case it does have to run into the Mudsdale, complete with Terra Grass as well. Just have to worry again a little bit about that. The ground weaknesses that it shares would be the Heatran. Last but not least, and I think this one, if I found a good position to clear, is the Vaporeon. With its water absorbability and Terra Fire, you can kind of put it in front of the Iron Bundle, and by making it so heavily invested in the special defense, you can see the calm nature and 116 special defense EVs, off its pretty decent special defense stat. Allows it to insulate itself versus the neutral hits from the Flutter Mane, which gets to reduce that even more and more as it stacks up Calm Minds, maybe 2 or 3, and then I'm set to attack. If it gets too far out of hand, even the Rotom can't really stop it outside of getting like a crit or maybe paralysis from Thunderbolt or Thunder Wave. Who knows? But yeah, that's my view on the matchup. This is what I've locked into the match. So here is how the match is actually. All right, so here we are, game number 1, and we do see that my opponent has opted for Flutter and Iron Bundle as expected. Alongside Scizor, Mudsdale, Rotom, and Fungus. I did forget to talk about that. That's something that could be relevant into the team if I'm not careful. But mostly I've got eyes on Flutter, Iron Bundle, and Rotom, as previously mentioned. So I didn't take a look. I don't really have the Terra sheet up in front of me. I'm not going to go ahead and click it, but everything's pretty standard fare. Everyone's got their natural Terra type, except for the Scizor, who is Terra Water. But they're going to lead Iron Bundle and Flutter Mane off whip, and we do see Boost Energy is boosting Iron Bundle's speed. Doesn't matter because my Electrode has the Scarf to outrun it and outguns it with the Volt Switch, positioning me into the Rillaboom, so I can fake out whatever's next to Flutter Mane next turn. Meanwhile, Flutter Mane with the Dazzling Gleam is showing the Life Orb after that chip. The Flash Cannon follow-up from the Heatran manages to get the KO. So I did the calc beforehand, and that doesn't normally KO, but that chip helps us out a lot. So now we're in a 4v2 situation pretty comfortably, and it's versus 2 grass Pokemon that Heatran's sitting in front of. Just to avoid any spores from occurring as the Fungus does tear into poison, my Heatran, I opt to Terra Grass just to avoid that. And that also allows me to get a Heat Wave, which firmly KOs the Rotom there. The Fake Out stops the Rotom from doing anything. And we do see the wasted turn from Spore from the Fungus go into the Heatran. From there, it's pretty much curtains. A knockoff to find the Eviolite, which is also expected, and the follow-up from the Heatran, more than enough to get the KO. Could have just Flash Cannon there, but it was at that point, I just kind of clicked the button to go ahead and close out the game. We move on into game number 2 here, and I find myself in an awkward position. They're leading Fungus and Scizor this time around, and probably picked the worst combination into that I could. Rillaboom and the Electrode, effectively not doing anything here. But we're going to go ahead and fake out, stop the Scizor from doing too much as we pivot out with the Electrode, using the Volt Switch. Just in case they protect it on the Scizor, I was more afraid of that. I'm going to go ahead and Volt Switch into the Fungus, get some chip damage on, and get Gyarados with an intent to intimidate the Scizor. Unfortunately, they got the clear amulet, so that's not working. And respect to my opponent, going for the Spore there into that slot, manages to snag sleep status onto the Gyarados. Gonna go ahead and retreat though, so I can get Heatran in. They go for a Bullet Punch to get some chip damage into Rillaboom. Thankfully, it's not using a bug move here. I'm gonna get a knockoff to get the clear amulet out of play that allows me to intimidate later on if I really need to. Meanwhile, Fungus showing toxic for the first time and getting some chip damage on the Rillaboom. Again, trying to avoid those spores if I can. Terra Grassing onto Heatran, kind of expecting that they don't have a bug move to really hit the Rillaboom if their first instinct was to use the bullet punch rather than anything like X-Scissor or U-turn here. So we're just going to go ahead and Terra Grass Heat Wave, get some chip damage onto Fungus. They go for a Spore. Again, another wasted turn just like in game number 1 here. All right, moving into this next turn, the close combat from the Heatran, the Scizor into the Heatran. So it was a good Terra, otherwise might have fallen to the close combat, that steel typing there. I'm going to go ahead and U-turn out, reposition yet again. I was thinking about using knockoff to get the Eviolite off of the Fungus there, and perhaps the Heat Wave would have picked up on it, both it and the Scizor at the same time. But I like this position a little bit more, where I just take out one Pokemon, not really worried about the Fungus. I can just kind of 1v1 with the Electrode essentially. Speaking of which, one of the things that we tried to pull off is the Scary Face behind the Choice Scarf, which allows my Heatran to move first, getting the Flash Cannon out ahead of the Flutter Mane. Didn't really matter too much. I didn't get the KO from there, but the Life Orb chip finishes off the job for me. Giga Drain crit from the Fungus, still not quite enough to get the KO, even with the residual damage from the Toxic here. So now it's down to the Iron Bundle to salvage the game, activates the Quark Drive with the Booster Energy. I'm gonna have to reset the Electrode here because it's kind of my ace in the hole for dealing with the Iron Bundle. They want to try and clear the field by using Icy Wind to get 2 knockouts perhaps, but I'm switching in the Gyarados just to take that. I don't mind sacrificing it at this point here. Another Giga Drain from the Fungus, not really getting too much value off of that one. I'm gonna bring in the Rillaboom here. Instead of going for Fake Out here, I'm gonna go ahead and get the Drum Beating for the KO. With my Assault Vest, I know that I'm bulky enough, even from that range, to go ahead and take a Freeze Dry from that bundle, because I'm based on the damage previously. I'm expecting no bulk investment, so the Drum Beating, even with bulk, over the grassy terrain is just guaranteed to clear. Not really much they can do to KO the Rillaboom outside of going for like a modest Freeze Dry there. But again, Fungus standing by itself. Whether or not the Rillaboom lives or dies, the Gyarados lives or dies, it's on its last legs, especially since we've knocked off that Eviolite and Burn is ticking down. Not too much you can do. Electrode coming in to finish the job. Gyarados will eventually wake up to and finish it off as well. So game 1, very clean. Game 2, a little bit shaky, especially considering that start. And I also had like a couple of routes I could have gone into to kind of clean up that end game. The one I chose, looks a little bit weird, but I think we get there with the Fungus being crippled and being the only other partner to bundle. Like, it looks a little bit different if Iron Bundle's next to Flutter Mane, but with Fungus effectively not being able to do anything to all the grass types that are on the field, that allowed me to focus my efforts onto whatever is sitting next to it, which we were able to dispatch pretty quickly. But yeah, that's week 1 for you. Keep an eye out for week number 2 once that concludes, and we'll do the same thing. In the meantime, if you can leave a like or a comment, I definitely appreciate those, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.